Our next session is all about BIML, and this is Alicia, and she will tell us how we can make our life better by using BIML. Alicia?
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me here tonight. I had a life-changing experience at SQL Pass last year, and I just wanted to share with you my excitement about BIML, and hopefully if you're in my space and you do some of the same things that I do, you will also find BIML to be a helpful tool in your toolkit. So a little bit about me. I just moved to the Portland area from Las Vegas. I attended the University of Nevada, and there I started with a team that offered a BI software solution for casinos, Valley Technologies. It was a BI stack, so SSIS, SSAS, SSRS. I then moved on to enterprise data warehouses at casinos. I've worked with Caesars Entertainment Enterprise Data Warehouse System, and most recently I've been at Allegiant Airlines, and I had the opportunity to really focus on my data modeling and hone my modeling skills there. So I'm really excited about being here in Portland, and the SQL community has been awesome and continues to be awesome. And I hope that comes through as part of the presentation tonight. So what was my life before BIML? As a data modeler, my projects were kind of partitioned into 3 different stages. So stage 1 was building out the staging databases, building out the SSIS package, and that was for the data extracts to hold my data. Stage 2 was data modeling, so understanding the data, putting together the views and stored procedures for the data transformations, and then hardening the fact and dimension tables, which I exposed to the BI teams. And step 3 is data validation. So that's building out my documentation, building out my support documents for Tier 2 support, and knowledge transfer with the business. So before SQL Pass last year, my project manager came up to me and he asked me for level of effort on a new project. So the business wanted to start operationalizing some of the metrics for one of the applications that we had, but we didn't have a data mart built on it yet. So we're looking at about 250 tables. It was a Sci-based system, so I didn't have any previous knowledge of this system. And I let him know that just building out the SSIS package alone was probably going to take me 4 to 5 weeks. So this was the week right before SQL Pass, and I already knew that I was going to be attending SQL Pass. So I arrived hungry for a tip or a trick that was going to help me to cut down the time frame for my project. So interestingly enough, I found that the amount of time that I spend in data validation directly impacts the perceived success and the perceived business value of my projects. So I was really looking for something that was going to help me a little earlier on in the project. So either with the data staging or the data modeling. And data modeling is the fun stuff, so I actually don't mind spending a whole bunch of time there. I was looking for something that was going to help me here. And that's exactly what I found with BIML. So what is BIML? BIML stands for BI Markup Language. It's XML based. What it's going to do is it's going to let you automate through scripting the building out of SSIS and SSAS objects. So that's integration services and analysis services. There's different IDEs that you can use. SQL Server, well, Visual Studio's 2015 with SQL Server data tools is a combination, and most recently they have the BI developer extensions. So Varigence has a suite of tools that are specifically designed to work with BIML. BIML Express is free, and if you are in the SSIS space, I would recommend you downloading and playing around with it. I do have a very brief demo that I've put together just so that the flavor of BIML can be expressed, and you can take a quick peek as to how easy it is to use and make a quick determination about whether this is a technology that you want to spend a little bit more time researching to maybe save a little bit of time out of your work schedule. So I have the Wide World Importers database that I'm using as my source database. And this is freely available on Microsoft's GitHub. Some of you may be familiar with this. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to be using BIML to create the temp packages to load a matching set of staging tables. So I do a lot of ELTing versus ETLing, and what I like to do is I just like to get a good look at my data first, So really helpful tool when you're in a mixed shop at work where you've got other technologies and you work with other DBAs where you're comfortable with the SSIS side of things and you don't have to intrude on them as much as far as being able to asking for them to print out documents and spending some time with you, kind of showing you the layout of the land. So BIML is going to be great for this. And this is going to be my project. Sorry, I probably should duplicate my screens at this point. So I'm using a combination of Visual Studio 2015 and the SQL Server data tools, and I've installed BIML Express as an add-in to my environment. When you open up the IDE, things are very, very similar to what you normally see. For those of you who aren't really hands-on with the SSIS package, I can give you a quick look. Usually you'll have a source and a destination connection manager, and then you'll have tasks within your package where you'll do your data transformations and you'll also do your data mapping. And these are kind of the core bones of a SSIS package. Now, some of us inherit huge packages that look like this when they're opened up, and they may or may not be alphabetized, and they may or may not be appropriately labeled. And just looking at the management that goes into having to maintain an SSIS package with over 200 plus tables, it can be quite a daunting task. Definitely one of those things where set it, forget it. If it's not broken, then maybe I don't have to look at that package, right? But using the BIML tool, it just makes things so much easier where, that fear of touching things is alleviated because you know that you can go in there and you can make these changes, and they can be pervasive changes that touch every single table. And the amount of level of effort and time is just minimized. So what I'm going to do is I will show you what I'm talking about. BIML files are available freely online for you to play around with. Catherine has a number of introductory projects on her website, and then there's BIML script, as well as the Varigen site. So what I would strongly encourage you to do is download a couple of files. You can open up any project, and under the miscellaneous tab, that's where the BIML files are going to go. But you can go ahead and add existing items to your project, and it'll go ahead and just zip it right in. So super easy. So I do have a couple of BIML files that are prepared. And again, BIML is XML based. So what we're going to do, sorry, I started from variables. So you'll see, yes. Sorry, I have cold hands, so this isn't working. I was playing around with this earlier too today. Control plus?
Try Control plus.
Or go into display properties in Windows. I think you can change the font. Or just
Okay. So sorry, so I will read it off to you, and so you know, BIML is XML based, so it's going to be tags. So as long as you know to start and finish a tag, some of these components are going to be familiar for you. There's the connection components. Then what we saw in the main package, where we have our execute SQL, our source and destination components, we can go ahead and dynamically iterate through a table schema and generate those objects. So I do have this huge package here, and I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And it's okay, because I can regenerate that almost instantly with BIML. So it's very, very easy to interact with the BIML compiler. We'll go ahead and do a quick check for errors. And you can see at the bottom right there, it's being run through the compiler. What this is doing is this is actually iterating through your objects. So we do have a call to our schema. And again, we're using the wide world importers. So my call said, hey, get all the tables that are in my source database. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to dynamically create all the transformations that I need to map one-to-one the data items in my source to my staging environment. Now, anybody who's had to manually go in an SSIS package and update all their connection strings and make sure all their fields mapped correctly and their metadata, you know, if somebody goes in and adds in those audit columns or some other type of pervasive change that affects a huge set of your schema, that there's quite a bit of work that goes into that. And BIML saves you from having to do a lot of that work. So that was the validate, and now we're going to do the build. Which is just as quick. And we have it back. So there's performance enhancements. Your code's now stored in files where if you're backing up your files in a file-based type of a directory, you can easily do that versus having somebody do a separate backup method for your SSIS packages. You can go ahead and store the source code that way in a document structure. And just brilliant. So just wanted to share that with everybody. And that was it for the demo portion. So I do have a couple of additional things that I'd like to say, though, as far as professional development and being part of the SQL Pass. So again, why use BIML? My original estimate to my project manager was 4 to 5 weeks. I came back from Pass, and within 2 weeks, I had SSIS done for my project with 250 tables. Yes.
Were you able to do it all with the BIML Express?
Yes.
Which is free.
Yes. So yes, free tool. And it increases agility. You're no longer schema bound. A lot of us work with agile development teams, and sometimes the fixed schema is no longer fixed when we're working on our data mart projects. And this alleviates a lot of the stress from having to double check that you have the latest version of the schema before you start building out your packages.
And you said it took you 2 weeks. Was that, had you already spun up on BIML, or did you spin up on BIML in those 2 weeks and generate?
You can probably in like 2 or 3 days, actually. I missed like a whole week of work because I was at SQL Pass, so I had some other maintenance activities that I was working on. But I test cases, playing around with the code, to QA under 2 weeks. And that's kind of another point about BIML, is it integrates into the environment that you're already using. The compiler is super easy to use. I think if you're familiar with scripting and having to close your tags, that's an understanding that if you're parameterizing and you're passing in your table schema, it is kind of like a document object model. So if you have an empty data set, there's some odd behaviors through the parser, but it's because the parser is parsing expanded XML. So if your data set is null, it's not getting to that point of your for loop. So I think that was the thing that got me, was understanding that it's more of a programmatic process than a T-SQL process. And I'm in T-SQL land most of my day, so.
Can you call BIML from within an SSIS package? So you have one package create a whole bunch of other packages?
This is kind of, the compiler moves at the beginning. Does that make sense? So I'm not sure about recursively call. I'm able to nest packages. So I have a master package that calls multiple other packages, but I don't think the parser recursively calls the parser. Does that make sense?
I mean, not, so if you had a static SSIS package, like a top level package, and then within there is a task to recreate a set of child packages, could it, from within SSIS, could you call the BIML package construction process from within SSIS?
Yeah.
To create the child packages and then run them, for example?
I haven't gotten that involved into it, and there's also the paid versions that Verigence has that I'm not very familiar with, so that isn't something that I've seen. But yeah, it's pretty neat technology because of the simplicity, I think. And but I can take a look for you and follow up.
Some good resources would be
Yeah.
Catherine Williamson,
Yeah.
and Andy Leonard. So those are both state folks.
So I was introduced to BIML by Catherine, and Catherine is a consultant and a BIML hero. So one of her specialties is going to be BIML. She has great information on her website. I do also have, well, I have a call to action for getting involved. Sequel Pass last year was such an amazing experience for me, and that's part of the reason why I'm here in Portland now. If you weren't able to attend, the recordings are available at thepassboutique.com. There's also a couple of Sequel Saturday events coming up in the near future. Some of them are fairly close. So Redmond, February 10th, Victoria, March 3rd, Spokane, March 10th, and Phoenix, March 17th. And today is the Pass Marathon online. So if you have a few extra hours in your day today, today is the Linux edition. So it's 24 hours of Pass online, and they have people from around the world speaking and talking about Microsoft technologies. And they have these throughout the year. So if you can't make it to one of the events in person, there's always an opportunity to participate online. And I do have some learning resources. So the Varigence website, a lot of documentation for BIML. They have a lookup for all the objects that they reference. And I found that to be really helpful, and it gave me a good idea of functionality and, hey, if I wanted to drill down to this point. But basically, if you have the object in Visual Studio, they'll have a reference to it for BIML. Thank you. Thank you for your time and attention, and thank you for letting me share.